clearly anything can happen in 2020 because I think that was one of the best New Hampshire races I think I've seen in a very long time. Wow. Yo, what is up everyone? My name is Jeff Cross and welcome back to the episode of NASCAR on MDK Victory Stop. The 2020 Foxwoods Casino Resort 301 from the New Hampshire Motor Speedway just wrapped up. Brad Keselowski is your winner, goes to victory lane at that 1.0 mile racetrack for the second time in his career, and it wrapped up a surprisingly very fun day of racing. So without further ado, let's talk about it. So we begin with two drivers, Corey LaJoie and Bubba Wallace. They had a pre-race inspection issue with an improper mounting ballast on those two race cars. And if you remember from Denny Hamlin's incident in the Coke 600, where a ballast, I forgot how you really pronounce it, fell off the car, a massive suspension or a huge fine and penalty as a result of that coming off. Luckily, this took place in the pre-race. This didn't take place in the actual event, but both drivers would lose 10 driver points. Both of the crew chiefs have been suspended. They had to leave the racetrack, and they would both lose their starting positions. With LaJoie, didn't really matter that much because he started all the way back in 34th, I believe, but Bubba Wallace took a pretty big hit because he was originally going to start 16th. But yeah, right off the bat, once again, Eric Almirola, he started on pole, got up to a blistering start. He had a pretty good gap on Denny Hamlin after the second turn on the back straightaway, but not so long after, 4 laps later, Brad Keselowski will go on and take the lead. And it was at this point it would become the Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin show. It was also at that time where we realized that this race was going to be a lot of fun to watch. In the middle of the pack, you saw drivers like Clint Bowyer, Ryan Blaney, Kurt Busch, William Byron, to name a few, would just lose it, get out of the groove. Entering turn number 3, I think this is due to the lack of practice. Remember, they don't have practice of qualifying. The race was the first time they ever went to the racetrack. I think them just getting used to the grooves, getting used to the feeling of the racetrack, because I think this is also the first time in 2 or 3 years that they're going to be racing under the 750 horsepower package. Big motor, small blade. I think all of that just equivalates to an unpredictable race. You even saw at one point Clint Bowyer pushing William Byron entering turn 3, him getting loose, was able to keep it going, but it was just a lot of jostling for position, a lot of being and banging back and forth. It really, truly made for some entertaining racing, at least in the midfield of the pack. And then on lap 16, a huge moment would take place during the race. Kyle Busch, who entered into the playoffs, I think 12th in points, has not won a race so far in 2020. He cuts a right front tire and smashes into the outside wall very hard and would immediately just take it to the garage. It was very, very surprised. It was a surprise to see nonetheless because I think a lot of us expected New Hampshire to be a type of racetrack that Kyle Busch could win at. It's under the 750 horsepower small spoiler package. He won there back, I think, in the summer or the fall of 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So won here recently, had speed at Kansas these past few races to the point where we thought he would have a shot at contending for the win. Didn't even have a chance to prove it. It looked like apparently it's a good year. He ran over some debris, and as soon as that happened, he just sent into the outside wall. Very tough to see. But he won't be the only driver that have issues with tires. That's another thing with this race. Tires was also a big factor in today's race. Meanwhile, his teammate Eric Jones, during the pit stop sequence when that caution came out, he was penalized for working on his car outside of his pit box, his pit crew. And as a result of that, he got put 1 lap down, which is huge because remember, Eric Jones came into this race 17th, I believe, or 17th or 18th in the point standing. So he needed to have a really good day in order to help his chances of making into NASCAR's playoffs. And this was the one thing that he did not need was any issues. And unfortunately in this race, he had much more issues a bit later on. But now we move to what took place on the racetrack, specifically up front. Very aggressive, fun racing. Drivers running different lines of the racetrack. You had some going in that second group, which I think used the PJ1. You had drivers go right on the yellow line. And then you had some drivers go below the line onto the apron trying to make passes for positions. 2 wide, 3 wide racing. Again, this took place mostly in the middle of the pack. But it was just so much fun. I was not expecting this type of racing to take place in New Hampshire, mainly because I put my expectations very low because if you look at last year's races, they had fun finishes, but the race as a whole was not that exciting. But this race blew it out of the water. You even had a three-way battle for the race lead between Keselowski, Hamlin, and Blaney, because during that last pit stop sequence, Hamlin and Blaney took 4 tires while Keselowski took 2. So it was Keselowski trying to hold off Hamlin and Blaney. And Keselowski and Blaney went, Hamlin and Keselowski, I should say, went after each other. Crossover moves, back and forth, swapping the leads. Again, it was just so much fun racing. I highly recommend when NASCAR posts the full race review, I think on Monday or Tuesday, watch the first, stage of this race. It was so much fun to watch. But unfortunately, with one driver, Jimmy Johnson, he had another issue. He was one of those drivers that also needed to have a good day. With 12 laps to go, he started back, I think, in 22nd, made his way all up into the top 5, and then coming off of turn 2, Clint Boyer just dives, turns Jimmy Johnson on the right front, spins him. Luckily, he wouldn't hit anything, but he would bring out the caution for the first time today, or I should say for the second time today. Now, during the final pit stop of stage 1, Ryan Blaney stayed out to try and gain some track position to win the stage. But Hamlin, with fresh tires when he pitted, he just blew by Blaney, past him with ease, and Hamlin would go on to win stage 1, Martin Truex Jr. in 2nd, Kevin Harvick 3rd, Christopher Bell in 4th. Remember, he's a driver that I said that would surprise a lot of people, and Brad Keselowski rounds out the top 5. So let's actually skip to lap 100 of the entire race. So during this time, Hamlin led for a good portion of the race. A lot of action in the middle of the racetrack. And then caution comes out for rain because it's 2020 and NASCAR, anytime there's a race, it has to rain. But during pit road, when caution came back, when cars were rolling, they came onto pit road. Truex had a penalty for an uncontrolled tire, and he had to draw back to the rear of the field, while Harvick stayed out on old tires to take the lead. Now, Harvick, he's going to be very important in stage 2. Remember that. Lap 100, he stayed out on old tires and not with a full tank of fuel. So of course, with drivers like Denny Hamlin, Joey Logano, and Brad Keselowski, them taking fresh tires very quickly took the race lead from Kevin Harvick as he fell back to 4th not too long after the restart came out for stage 2. And once again, with Keselowski and Hamlin being 1 and 2, we saw more great racing, more crossovers on each other. But this time it wasn't as intense like last time where it even involved Blaney and 2 other drivers like DiBenedetto and even Jimmy Johnson, Clint Boyer. This time Keselowski was able to get by Hamlin after a few laps and was able to drive away from Hamlin with the lead. So now while you had Keselowski and Hamlin out there 1 and 2, Keselowski, he's gone with the lead. You had drivers like Blaney and Kevin Harvick in deep trouble. Blaney drops back to save fuel, and on top of that he has an ill-handling race car, him being too loose. Harvick, on the other hand, is in a worse spot. Remember, he last pitted back on lap 98, and he and his team were banking, it looks like, on a caution, but it never came, at least not when Harvick and his team needed to. And he had to pit with 16 laps to go in stage 2, and was the only one to pit. But 1 lap later, after Kevin Harvick did his pit stop and was able to get back on the racetrack, Blaney came onto pit road. And on that exact same time, Christopher Bell cuts a right rear tire and spins in turns 1 and 2 to bring out the caution, while Blaney was on pit road. So because of that, he had to go to the back end of the field. Austin Dillon will get out on pit road first by taking 2 tires, but unlike in Texas, here in New Hampshire, he fell right away. It fell right outside the top 5 in, I think, in about a lap or 2, while Keselowski, Hamlin, and Almirola both went away with the top 3 after the first lap. Then with 7 laps to go, off of turn number 2, Matt Kenseth gets loose underneath his teammate Kurt Busch, spins to the inside wall but doesn't hit anything. But that does set up a 2-lap shootout between Keselowski and Hamlin, and they were basically side by side for almost the entire 2 laps. Keselowski and Hamlin went into the final turn on the final lap next to each other, but Keselowski was able to just squeeze his way up in front of Hamlin to steal stage 2. And stage 3 began absolutely mental. Matt Kenseth 2 times cut a right front tire. The first time wasn't as bad, like he cut the tire, but it was way before turn 3. The second time, it was not as lucky. He was not as lucky. He cut a right front tire, I think, in the exact same spot as Kyle Busch did in turn 3, crushed the outside wall, and sent it straight to the garage. Not so long after, though, John Hunter Nemechek, in almost the exact same situation, cuts a right front tire, smashes it into the outside wall, goes into the garage. It was a bad day for Goodyear, to say the least. There were multiple tire failures. Actually, now that I think about it, Didn't Silverstone had the same sort of problem? You had Sainz having a tire problem, Bottas having a tire problem, and Hamilton having a tire problem. What is with the racing world and tires today? I don't know. But it was chaotic to say the least. And at first it looked like, okay, this is sort of probably going to eliminate the possibility of a fuel mileage race with all these cautions coming out. But that would ultimately be the last caution that would take place. So under 80 laps to go of the entire race, that's when fuel strategy comes into play. And you had drivers like Hamlin, Keselowski, Harvick, who remember, he pitted way back earlier around a lap, I think with 15 or 16 to go in stage 2. He now has the freshest tires. He's storming his way through the field and was able to get inside the top 10. But no cautions would take place, but also no incidents for the race leader Brad Keselowski, as he would go on to win the race, his second victory at New Hampshire. His first one came back in 2014. And it capped off a very exciting race. Stage 1 was absolute chaos. Stage 2 was slightly less chaotic. It was became more of a strategic race. And then stage 3 was all about fuel mileage and saving fuel, saving tires. That was basically what was going on that entire race. Who's going to be able to preserve their tires and save their fuel to the very end? And Keselowski was the man that got it done first. So let's take a look at the unofficial results. Brad Keselowski wins for, like I said, the second time in his career at the racetrack. Second place is Denny Hamlin. Third is Martin Truex Jr. Fourth is Joe Logano, I should say. Fifth is Kevin Harvick. Sixth, Matt DiBenedetto. A solid effort for him. Seventh is Eric Almirola. Eighth is Cole Custer. It was a very quiet day for Cole Custer. Nice rebound for him to finish in the 8th spot. Ninth is Chase Elliott, and rounding out the field is Tyler Reddick in the top 10, I should say. 11th is William Byron. 12th is Jimmy Johnson. Now, this is kind of slightly disappointing because when the under 80 laps to go, and we were sort of going into fuel saving mode, Johnson was running 6th, and I think he probably used up his tires because he went from 6th, fell to 12th, tried to hold off Reddick and Byron, but was unsuccessful, and he would finish in the 12th spot. Remember, Reddick, Byron, and Johnson, all those 3 drivers are fighting to either stay in the playoffs or push their way into the playoffs. So all 3 of those drivers needed a good run. Byron got what he needed because he entered into this race as a last driver to hold the playoff spot. He did what he needed to do in 11th spot. Just be around the drivers you're competing with. Johnson and Reddick, on the other hand, they had a good day, but when you look at the point standings, they needed to do a lot better. Anyways, 13th is Austin Dillon. 14th is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 15th is Alex Bowman. 16th is Ryan Preece. Tell you what, Ryan Preece, that's a solid day for him. After what they've been through this past month, I should say, they needed a top 20 would be great. And they did just that, finishing in the 16th spot. 17th would be Kurt Busch. 18th, Clint Bowyer. 19th, Michael McDowell. And round out the top 20 is Ryan Blaney. Blaney, once again, had a fast car, but stage 3, they just crumbled. Them being off sequence with pit cycles, I think it just ruined their chances, I think, of having a good run. But and it sucks because they have speed, they have the car to win, but always in stage 3, something happens or something just doesn't go their way, and they end up leaving with a bad finish, or at least a finish that they didn't really deserve. Here's some notables. Eric Jones in the 24th spot. I don't know what happened with him, but I don't know if it was him coming. Eric Jones, 24th. I have no idea what happened with him. I really don't know. He got back on the lead lap due to that caution coming out with Kyle Busch, or not Kyle Busch, but with Christopher Bell, I believe. So he was able to get back on the lead lap, but I don't know what happened. His car just was awful, really. 24th spot. Again, he's another driver fighting to get into the playoffs. You cannot afford days like this. You cannot afford runs like this if you're going to try and fight your way into the top 16. And I don't know, but I thought maybe after last weekend at Kansas, okay, I thought, all right, he's going to get the ball rolling, but right back down to square one, I guess. Eric Jones, not a good day for him. 37th, Matt Kenseth, just an awful day for him. Right front tire after right front tire after right front tire. Multiple tire failures for the 42 team. Rounds up 37th, and Kyle Busch dead last in 38th after only competing in just 16 laps. So, what would I give this race? This was a fun race. I'll be honest. I had a lot of fun with this race, and I was not expecting it for a race like New Hampshire to produce that good of racing. Again, I was quite surprised. Maybe it's because I lowered my standards to New Hampshire so low that anything surprises me, but based from what I've seen on social media, there's a lot of people that also enjoy that race. It started off chaotic in stage 1, and then it turned to a strategic race in stage 2 and stage 3. Every stage had something different, and I really enjoy that. You had a lot of different contenders in each stage, but it was basically the Keselowski and Hamlin show, and Keselowski will go on to take the victory. Props to him and the number 2 team. And yeah, next weekend will be Michigan, a doubleheader Saturday and Sunday. I'll be interested to see what happens there. Specifically with the playoff picture heating up, it's going to be a very fun last 6 races. It's also going to be a very fun month of August. I mean, you have doubleheaders in Michigan. You have the Daytona Road Course, Daytona International Speedway on the Oval as a regular season finale. And it's going to be a lot of fun seeing these final 6 races and NASCAR's chase for the playoffs. But that's going to end this episode of MDK Victory Stop. Tell me your guys' thoughts in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on this race? But until next time, my name is Jack Cross from MDK, and I'll see you guys next time.